Dadaab is a harsh place to live, like all refugee camps. Ironically, despite how harsh living conditions are, they're actually better for the vast majority of the refugees than is the case on the Somali side of the border. They have housing, shelter, they have food rations, they have access to basic medical assistance, and they have access to education. Dadaab itself looks like a very large city with hundreds of thousands of people and shops. It's been there now for almost 25 years. So it's not a pleasant place to be, but for many of the refugees, it's a better alternative than going back home right now. Right now, the vast majority of the returnees, who will number about 250,000 Somalis who are being pressured to leave Dadaab, almost all of them are going to return to one of three cities, Kismail, Mogadishu, the capital, or Baidoa. Unemployment is exceptionally high in all of the major Somali cities, 70 to 80%. The returnees are mostly from a relatively weak social group, the Digil Marifle clan, and many are also Somali Bantu, a minority group. So they will have very weak, limited claims on rights to work and land in these cities that are dominated by more powerful clans. Livelihoods, as a result, are going to be very hard to come by for them in the long term. Well, they don't have easy options to stay in Kenya because the Kenyan government is closing the camp over the course of this year. Now, they've delayed that decision, postponed it currently to May 2017 and potentially beyond. But for the refugees, just staying in the camp is not an option. It will close. They will either have to go back into Somalia, or some will attempt to stay in Kenya illicitly or through marriage with a local Somali Kenyan family. I mean, there's a handful of ways that they will try to stay in Kenya. We suspect some may go to Somalia and then loop back into Kenya to escape conditions in Somalia. So there will be a certain amount of backflow of the refugees, but not so many. Well, nothing is 100% certain, but it is definitely the case that the Kenyan government is very committed to seeing this camp close. The delays have mainly been due to international pressure on the part of UNHCR, international donors, human rights groups, and others. So there's been a lot of negotiations between the Kenyan government and the international community about this, and that's led to some of the delays and extensions of the closure of the camp, but we expect it to close. You're right. I mean, over the past 4 or 5 years, Kenya has been increasingly targeted by the group Shabaab, which originates in Somalia. The decision to close the camp has been something that's been discussed over a 3-year period. And is based on a claim by the Kenyan government that Shabaab uses the camp to smuggle weapons and to recruit. The actual evidence is very thin that Shabaab uses the camp in any substantial way. The refugees in some ways are being scapegoated for this particular problem. The security challenge that Kenya faces with Shabaab and with other spillover from Somalia is going to remain. The camp really is not a substantial part of the security problem that Kenya faces. Certainly, one can be sympathetic to Kenya for the burden that it has shouldered with regard to the refugee flow. On the other hand, Dadaab has also been a cash cow for Kenya. It has attracted large-scale humanitarian relief, lots of jobs. It is a major economic hub in its own right, thanks to lots and lots of transited goods, smuggled goods, from Somalia's ports into Kenya. And so some are arguing that it'll actually be a net loss economically for Kenya. A lot of that varies depending on what part of Kenya you're talking about and which sectors of the economy you're talking about. There'll be winners and losers with this camp closure. this is all about the election. The refugees and the Somalis in general are being scapegoated for Kenya's security problems. The ruling coalition is using the closure of the camps as a way of positioning itself as being tough on security. That really is ultimately what's driving this policy. We don't expect this large influx of up to 250,000 Somali returnees to have any immediate dramatic effect on local security. In the long run, though, the returnees are intensifying pressure on conflict issues that have gone unresolved for a long time in Somalia related to identity, land, and rights. The returnees are again, mainly from a large socially weak group. They are going to change the demographics of the cities of Mogadishu and especially Kismayo, where they will come close to doubling the population. That's going to raise very interesting questions about whose city is it, who has the right to run for office there and make claims for jobs. If and when Somalia ever has universal elections, the presence of such a large number of Digo Marifle and Somali Bantu in the cities that are claimed by more powerful clans is going to be an issue. I think the last thing the Kenyan government wants is a completely uncontrolled flow of people across their border into a variety of different areas. But it is not going to make the Kenyan government and many Kenyan people happy to have to host yet another influx of Somali refugees. This has been going on for 25 years.
Okay.